In this video, we're going to talk about the text type. Now, the text type, it sounds really boring, but you know what? It's actually pretty awesome. It is, in QML, pretty much just amazing what you can do with this thing. You can inline add HTML and it automatically parses it for you, and you can have links to things. For example, click this link and it goes to Google automatically. Pretty sweet. Let's check this out. All right, so first thing we're going to do, go in here, kill any previous application I had running, and we're going to say text. Now let's give it an ID of my text. It's only existing by itself, so we really don't need an ID, but I want to get in that habit of doing this. All right, first things first, let's go ahead and drop an anchor here. So we're going to say anchors, and I want to center in the parent, which is the window, and let's just look at this. Plain old boring little text. Well, let's make this super awesome. First things first, we're going to change this. And we're just going to add some HTML in here. Now, if you don't know HTML, it's just simply a, well, I don't even want to call it a language, but it's a hypertext markup language. It's basic foundations of everything you see on the internet. Almost every web page is made out of HTML. And they're simple text-based commands. You turn something on, for example, the B is bold, and I'm going to say hello, and then you can turn it back off using that slash. And I'm going to make an italic, and I want a font, obviously not following any sort of real standard here. I'm just doing whatever I feel like because I feel like it, and we're going to say color, green, and let's go ahead and turn that off. Let's say slash font slash I. Again, breaking a lot of standards just because I feel like it. Save and run. Let's see if that thing works. Sure enough. Now, it's really, really small, so I don't want to play around with HTML too much. Let's make it bigger using the actual property. So I'm going to say font dot, and I want the point size. We could do pixel or point, doesn't really matter which one you choose. It's more of a convenience. Some people want pixel perfect size, other people are graphic designers and they want a point size. I'm going to set this to 35. And you know, I saw bold, so let's do font bold. And I'll say true. And then font dot italic, and I'll say false. Notice a problem right off the bat, though. I'm saying font italic false, but I have world in italic up here, and I have hello in bold. So let's false both of those and see what happens. Hello world. Notice how I have false false, but it's actually reading it. So this is overridden, meaning might not work. I say might not because it depends on what you have up here. So for example, if I say true on both of these, notice now that they are both italic and bold. So it kind of combines the two and tries to do a best effort of what it thinks you actually want between the properties and the actual inline HTML. So when in doubt, use one or the other, but don't mix and match both of them because you're going to get some really confusing results. All right, let's go ahead and continue down this, and this is going to get kind of nutso here. And I'm going to add a hard return, and we'll say font color, and I feel like just adding a property in here. Let's call this C0, C0, C0. And we are going off the screen here, so get some real estate so we can see what's going on. And I'll say this is a test. Save and run. You can get some really cool styles here, but you notice how we've got what I call spaghetti code, meaning just looking at this, it's kind of hard to figure out what the heck's actually going on. And buyer beware if you do something like that. Most systems, it should be fine, although sometimes you're going to end up with some headaches and you're going to have to try and figure out what the heck's actually going on. So let's try this and see if that runs. And it runs. Got lucky. On my Mac it didn't run, and I ended up with all sorts of headaches trying to figure out why it wouldn't run. So let's just do some multi-line here, and I'm going to say, let's add a link here. So we'll say A, href, href, and I want to do to google.com, or it could be any website you want. Turn our link off. And let's just call this my link. Notice how the link is actually stylized. A little bit more advanced than what we're going to cover, but you can turn links on and off and stylize them however you want them. It gets really complex what you can do with this thing, but it's just incredibly cool that all of this functionality is baked right in, because a lot of times when you talk about text, you're talking plain old boring text with no little frills in there. All right, so let's go ahead and set a default color. And let's say red. And why not? Let's just show the link color. And we can say green. Notice how our link is now green. We can switch that over to blue if we feel like it. But you could really heavily stylize these things. Now, again, beware if you've got some style going on up in here and you try to overwrite it here, it's going to best guess try to figure out what you're trying to do. You're going to get some unpredictable results. Now, let's make that link actually work. So we're going to use a signal, and we're going to say on link hovered. I want to know when they actually mouse over this thing. And we're going to say console.log, and we're hovering on. Now, if you're wondering how I just magically knew what that link was, well, this is one of the downsides of QML. You've got to kind of really dive into the documentation. Once in a while, you get lucky and you just control space, and you can just kind of guess what it's looking for here. Ah, there's link. But 9 times out of 10, you've got to really dive into the documentation and figure out what's going on, and it gets a little bit complex sometimes. Let's go here. There are some other tips and tricks you can do, but basically when in doubt, read the documentation. If, and then we're going to add a little bit of logic here. If link, meaning if there is a link, then my text, font.bold, and we're going to say true. Some basic JavaScript here. Again, JavaScript's going to be covered in a later section. I'm just showing you can do it. All right, so let's save and run. And as we hover, you can see it is changing the bold. And we're also getting the hover over here. If you watch this, you can see it's changing as well. So now we have visual and non-visual feedback. Now we want to know when that link is actually clicked. So we're going to say on link activated. And here we're going to say cute. And we want to open the URL externally. Again, how did I know it's looking for a link? Read the documentation. I hate telling people that, but that's probably the fastest way to figure out what you're doing here. And save and run. Ta-da! And of course, you can nix this whole thing, go back into the code, and you can change this to whatever you want. Changing it to my website, Void Realms. Ta-da! Works pretty darn smooth. Now, again, going through the documentation is not always for the faint of heart, but you can say signals. Okay, link activated. Notice how it's got this property link. It's actually not a property, it's a variable, but you get what I'm saying here. These are the signals it's going to emit. Notice it's not on link activated or on linked hovered. So what's happening in the background is the signal link activated is getting emitted, and QML in the background is connecting them to a slot that starts with on and then whatever the signal name is. So on link hovered, on link activated. One thing they don't really describe too well in the documentation, but I think you're smart enough to figure out what's going on here.